So hi and welcome everybody to this panel discussion on the craft of textiles weaving in Myanmar. My name is Nadia and I'm the production marketing manager at ISHKAR. For those who are not familiar with ISHKAR, we are a social enterprise established in 2016 by Edmund Lebrun and Flor de Tan, with the aim of creating market access for exceptional artisans and master craftsmen in regions that have been isolated from global markets. Since then, we have evolved to also incorporate travel as well as events and storytelling aimed at challenging one-sided narratives of countries in which we work and to help shine a spotlight on craft techniques such as weaving from Myanmar that we are going to discuss in this panel. We have worked extensively with Turquoise Mountain in Afghanistan for many years, and we are thrilled to have just launched our first collection with Turquoise Mountain in Myanmar, working with weavers in Khine state. So to introduce our panel today, we're joined by Mahn, May and Nathalie from Turquoise Mountain. Mahn previously worked as a social enterprise consultant at the British Council before going on to work with Turquoise Mountain, where she's helped to launch the Textiles project in 4 different regions across Myanmar. May currently works with Turquoise Mountain, specialising in traditional weaving practices and techniques across Myanmar and on the promotion of her country's heritage through these crafts and traditions. And Nathalie joined the Myanmar team as country director in 2019, after 2 years with Turquoise Mountain as deputy country director in Afghanistan. Nathalie was a diplomat for the Dutch Foreign Service before joining Turquoise Mountain, and prior to that worked in the heritage preservation in the Indian Himalaya and Bangladesh, as well as in investment banking in London. So we are going to begin with a few questions for our panel, and then we will share a presentation of different weaving techniques, which May, Mahn and Nathalie will talk us through. And that will be followed by a few more questions before we open up the conversation for our audience for a Q&A. So please write your questions in the chat box as we go, and I'll be able to ask those to our panel at the end. So we begin with our first question, and that is just to hear a bit more about the work that Turquoise Mountain is doing in Myanmar.
Thank you, Nadia, and we're very pleased to be part of this panel. We came to Myanmar about 5 years ago to do what we do in all of the countries in which we work, which is to preserve urban heritage on the one hand, and to preserve endangered crafts and to support artisans. Yangon is one of the very few cities in Asia that largely has its historic city center intact. So it's a really unique place, and to date we've completed 3 restoration projects in downtown Yangon. And when it comes to craft preservation and supporting artisans, we're working in jewelry, in traditional goldsmithing and silversmithing, in artisanal textiles, which we'll talk more about today, and lacquerware.
Amazing, thank you so much. So I think then we'll just sort of feed into some questions about the weaving in Myanmar, and I think to start with a question about the history of weaving in Myanmar and the different techniques used.
Thanks for your question. I will take this one. So weaving in Myanmar has prevailed for centuries now. It is actually hard to indicate which year exactly, but it is believed to have existed since the Bagan dynasty era, which is the first dynasty era around 11th, 12th century. And as we can see, the weaving depicted in nowadays palm leaf writings, mural wall paintings in ancient pagodas in Bagan. In Myanmar nowadays, there are notably 2 major weaving styles, weaving methods, that is frame loom, which is known as hand loom weaving, and backstrap weaving. While the backstrap weaving is believed to have existed longer in history, the culture of hand loom was introduced in the colonial times, with the entry of the British colony. And when it comes to techniques of weaving, as we have many different ethnic groups inside our country, each has its own style, a unique style, pattern, methods, or traditional inspiration as when they are created or woven. We will be talking more about this in details in coming sessions soon. Thanks.
Amazing. And the next question that we had for you is to hear a bit more about what makes these motifs and patterns unique to Myanmar.
Sorry, my microphone was sorry. So I'll take that question. So when you look at the motifs on these traditional textiles, they may not that look unique because we can see similar geometric patterns, say for example in Lao textiles or textiles from other neighboring countries. But what makes these weaving traditions and motifs unique to Myanmar culture and each ethnic group is the meaning behind them. It is because these traditional clothes or textiles reflect the culture and lifestyles of different ethnic groups. Old textiles, they can even serve as like windows into the past. Like, we can, by looking at old textile, we can think about like, how these people might have lived, and their community culture and such. So I would say that we can see the connection between the motifs and to their culture in two ways. The first way is in how these textiles are being used. Let me give you a really lovely example, which is the wedding blanket of Khine people. Khine is one of the main ethnic groups in Myanmar. So when a Khine woman is about to get married, she or herself or even her mother weaves a blanket made out of two backstrap pieces. It is the blanket that the Khine lady and then her husband would use during their lifetime. So when one of them passes away, the blanket is cut into half, and then one half of the blanket is buried together with the body. So they believe that the blanket will guide them towards each other in next life. So in that way, it's just not a blanket anymore. It is a cultural piece, So, and the second way is how these motifs, where these motifs come from. So a lot of the motifs that we see in the textiles are inspired from the nature that surrounds these weavers and the lifestyles. So a lot of the motifs are interpretations of flowers and vegetables or animals that are found in their environment. So let me tell you the meaning of the motifs on the Khine back cover and cushion that we developed for ISHKAR. So those diamond motifs you see on the back cover originally inspires from pumpkin seeds, actually. So back in the day, Kachin people used to eat these pumpkin seeds as their source of food. So out of gratitude, they decided to weave these pumpkin seeds into their textile and clothing and traditional head wraps, and they wear them. They wear these pumpkin seeds motif textile as a, how do I say, lucky charm or talisman to prevent them from going into hunger. So which I think is a really special story, and in this way, these motifs are very unique to the weavers' culture and their behaviors or lifestyles. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So when you touched on the product that we developed with you, and one of the things as we were developing that product that I was completely in awe of was the process of setting up the looms, and how sort of the how sort of time consuming and labor intensive the process of setting up the looms and how special this was. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that process. So I'm sure there'll be other people that aren't aware of maybe the process that goes into the setting up the looms for the beginning of the weaving of the base fabrics.
Yeah, sure. So before we could actually start weaving, there are a lot of processes, like quite lengthy actually. And so from raw materials to spinning of the yarn to dyeing, etc. But for today, I think I will focus on the two preparatory steps right before weaving. So let's say we have dye yarn in our hands now. So the first preparatory step that we need to do is what we call warping. I won't go too much details into what it is because it is quite technical, but essentially we have a roller or what we call a weaver's beam. And so warping is essentially based on the fabric density that we want. We are putting number of threads onto the weaver's beam so that we can put it onto the loom. Here, I want to point out one thing that is, so when we receive yarn from the yarn production department or like whatever we buy in the market, those yarns are not quite ready to go straight into warping process. They are packaged in a way that is more suitable or to maximize yarn production capacity. So when we get the yarn, we need to repackage them to make them suitable for warping process. So here, you can already see like how this process can take time. Yeah. So let's say we have the weaver's beam in our hand now. It can now be put onto the loom. And second process that we have to do is the process called drawing in. So you remember that threads that we put on the weaver's beam, now those threads needs to be drawn into holes at two places. One is what we call heel wires. Heel wire is very important because it's going to separate the warp sheets into two layers and open up them like that so that we have a space to do weaving. And so after going through the heel wires, the second place where every single thread on the weaver's beam need to drawn through is what we call reed. Reed is a comb-like structure that sits on the loom, and it assists in the weaving, and also it is there to keep the fabric density count. So for example, for ISHKAR back cover fabrics, we use reed count 64, which means there are 64 number of threads in an inch. So for our fabric, I think our width is about 40 inches. So that means we have about 2,500 threads, number of threads in our ISHKAR fabric. So those every single threads need to be drawn through the holes. So the process takes just going through the heel wire can take half a day, and just putting them through the reed can take another half a day and such. So yeah, that's how the process is quite lengthy and labor intensive. But after putting in through the reed, the loom is now ready, and we can start weaving. But it will only be plain fabric. So in order to put in designs, we need to do additional process like design drafting, and which can take several more days. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm now going to share my screen, and then we've got a presentation. So we'll run through the images, and our panel will talk us through those. So if you bear with me 2 seconds, I will share that, and then we can begin. So if you want to go ahead, we can start now with the presentation.
Yes, so this is a very common sight that you can find in Myanmar, especially when you are flying domestically. There will be like these golden pagodas, or sometimes white lime wash stupas on mountains and hills around the country. So that's one of the reasons why our country is called the Golden Land of Myanmar, because of these golden pagodas all around the country. Yes. Next slide. So this picture is showing frame loom weaving it was taken at a weaving workshop in Mandalay, which is in middle part of the country. You can see these like parallel running threads going towards the weaver. So the rear part of the loom is cut out from the frame, but towards the away from the weaver, you will see the weaver's beam that I was mentioning before. And then you can see these threads going into the heel wires, which is the bar lifted right in front of the weaver. Yeah. And so the weavers, her name is called Mesu. She's a very talented weaver and she loves weaving. And you can see like how happy she is to weave just from her smile. Yeah, and she has worked with TM to develop really complicated patterns of like silk and cotton combinations for one of our clients. And next, please. This is a picture taken in northern part of Rakhine State. Rakhine State is located along the southeast eastern part, southwest of the country, along the border of India and Bangladesh. So here we can see the home base backstroke weaving. So here the backstroke, here again, the part on the right is a little bit cut off, but you can see these threads will be looping onto a bamboo stem, and then in backstroke loom, the tension is provided by the weaver's body. So you can see how she has a belt going around her waist, and so these weavers are male ethnic group. Yeah. And next slide. Here we can see the hand picking of the warp threads to form the design. Here, it takes a lot of patience and skills to get precise design. You can imagine like how labor intensive already, and it takes many days for the weaver to finish to complete a piece. Sometimes like if the pattern is really complicated, they can only finish up to 5 to 7 centimeters a day. Yes. So the weaver here called Domesday. She is a 65-year-old lady with almost like 2 decades of weaving experience, and she learned her weaving. She learned how to weave from her mother. So this picture was taken when we visited Rakhine State in 2018. At her place, and we fell in love with the picture weaving that is shown in the picture. So later we tried to develop with the same color palette and the same design into wedding blankets at TM. Next slide. So this is again is also a backstrap weaving, and here you can see the tools that they use. The weavers use in backstrap weaving, mostly like natural elements that they found in their environment, like bamboo sticks or wooden stick, all these things that can be found in nature easily. But they need to be really polished well so that they are smooth, so that the yarns don't break. And they also need to be even without any bumps, so that the tension in the warp is uniform across the width. For design picking, as you notice in previous picture, the weaver used a wooden stick, but in other ethnic groups, sometimes they use porcupine spine to pick the design. Yes. Next slide, please. This is a picture of Khine Lake, which is situated in Khine State on eastern part of the country. You can see there are a lot of lotus flowers in the lake, and there's a significance to it. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so as I was saying before, you see the lotus flowers, and now we have the lotus yarn extraction. The picture is showing how the lotus fibers are extracted from the lotus stems. Lotus weaving is very unique and originates from Khine Lake. So lotus weaving is considered very sacred because it is when it started, lotus fabric was woven to make into a Buddhist monk robe for a reverend monk back in the days. So nowadays, due to the cooling properties of lotus fabrics, lotus fabrics are now made into different products now. But lotus fiber and the extraction is considered very valuable and very sacred. Yes. Next slide, and I will now hand over to Nathalie.
Thank you, Heyman. Yeah, nature all over the world has given colors to yarn for centuries, and so too in Myanmar, where weavers use plants such as indigo to dye their yarns blue, or turmeric for yellow and orange colors. But with the introduction of synthetic dyes in the middle of the 20th century, a lot of the know-how and the traditions that were associated with natural dyeing were lost. And so we are working with communities across Myanmar to revive this ancient knowledge and to train them how to use natural dyes for products that are intended for the contemporary textiles market. Next slide. Pass it on to May.
Yes, thanks both Nathalie and Heyman for this explanation. I will now take from the slide. So this picture we're seeing is Khine traditional backstrap weaving. Khine State is the least developed, hilly and remote region located in western Myanmar. It is bordering with India in the northern part. Khine has actually several tribes within itself and renowned for its unique culture of different backstrap weaving. The one that we are seeing right now is the traditional Hakka Khine backstrap weaving, also well known for from their northern Khine design. Next slide, please. So this is the Kachin frame loom weaving. In the picture is one of our supported weavers from Kachin State in northernmost part of Myanmar. She is weaving a traditional longi, Kachin longi. Longi is a Burmese term we use for bottom wear for both men and women. In this picture, she is weaving a Kachin traditional longi. And the square diamond shapes that you see on the fabric, they are recognized to be one of the key symbols commonly found in Kachin fabric. Next, please. This is the picture that was taken in Rakhine, specifically speaking northern Rakhine, where there are many of our supported weavers the same way. It shares border with southern Khine State, so occupied by many ethnic groups, including Khine tribes and also Rakhine ethnic people, example, Myo, Khmer, Asho, and etc. And they're also very well known for their backstrap weaving. Next, please.
So this is one of the heritage fabrics that belongs to the Myo Khine tribe that we stumbled across when we were visiting Rakhine. And it's really an exceptional piece where each design thread, so is hand embroidered after weaving using a cross stitch. And this is a technique that is virtually lost now in Myanmar and only practiced by the much older ladies. And so it's something that we hope we can work with them to pass it on to the next generation. Next slide.
So this is the wonderful example of Rakhine heritage backstrap fabric. It is a Leidu Chin. Leidu is also one of the tribes of Chin. Leidu Chin traditional fabric used in the past times as lady shawls in celebrational events. And when you look at the blue squares on the fabric carefully, you will see the mini squares inside, which is inspired by the bamboo fence that protects their houses. Many of Chin and Rakhine traditional patterns are inspired by nature, just like Mahn explained in the previous session, such as the seasonal flowers, vegetables, or green plants that just grow in the streams or in the streets that has unique shape for them to inspire and to get inspired and to imitate. Next, please. Okay, this is our traditional heritage backstrap piece collection, which was also recently presented in Decorex International, which is a leading European design event. Interesting thing about these pieces is that they are woven in different parts of Rakhine State and also hold different meanings and different traditional use and inspiration. So for example, the green one, the granite green one that you are seeing right now, just on the top left, is a Leidu traditional Chin fabric woven by our supported Rakhine weaver, who is originally based in the IDP camp. And this piece is believed to be used as traditional accessory as gaongbang. Gaongbang is a term, also traditional term for head wrap used by male, and they will be wearing in yearly spiritual events. And the navy and blue combination that you're seeing is a lady shawl commonly used in wedding events. And this piece is woven in Miao Township, one of the historic sites of Myanmar as well. And this piece is inspired by a form of flower in the past.
So that is the last slide of the presentation. So I'm just going to stop the screen share and we can come back to some more questions for our panel. So the next question, we wanted to ask you about what is the primary markets for these products? Are they sold within Myanmar? And what is the sort of target market for the new textiles that are being developed?
Yes, so I think that answer very much depends on what kind of products we are looking at, but certainly there's a primary market and it's a domestic market especially for traditional clothing and fabrics. And so those are mainly produced both by hand looms and power looms in middle part of the country. Yes, so markets for actually backstrap woven pieces is actually quite smaller. They depend on tourist and foreigner markets. And they are sold mainly at a tourist attraction market in Yangon, which is the commercial city of the country. And the market is called Bojong Market. And additionally, I would say that product diversification is not very great. And that's why mostly the market is for thin fabrics thin cotton fabric that are fit for clothing. So there's not much upholstery weight fabrics that we can see. But surprisingly, in the last 2 years, there is a heightened interest, increased interest in hand-woven textile among domestic consumers, especially for cotton and natural dye products. During this COVID pandemic, like this past year, a lot of small textile businesses emerged, and they like working with cotton textile, hand-woven fabrics. They try to come up with new products to attract more local customers, because essentially the foreigner market is shut off. So they are trying to come up with new products and to attract more domestic customers. Yes, but still, I would say that the domestic market is not sufficient enough to sustain full-time weaving for many of the weavers, especially there is no essentially there is no domestic market for more like high-end luxury and complicated weaving. Yeah. So there's a small international market exists for Kachin textiles. So Kachin textiles are exported to China mainly for like a small group of Kachin ethnic people living across the border in northern part of the country. Yeah. So other than that, from like one or two individual workshop exporting as not commercial, like not big size, but in small quantities to individual clients abroad, the international market is close to none. But I would say there's a huge potential for like our Myanmar textile has a huge potential for international market, and we should aim for that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So that leads into our next question, to understand what are the greatest challenges that artisans that specialize in weaving face?
Okay. The biggest and prominent challenges that majority of the weavers here experience would be first, access to high quality raw materials, such as yarn, like silk, cotton, and dyes, because nowadays we hardly produce the yarn domestically. Instead, it is outsourced from other countries such as India, China, to get a quality product. And another thing would be access to market also, especially for backstrap weaving, because they are apparently home-based weavers, and many of them are found isolated in their native land, separated from the common market. And last but not least, it would be insufficient recognition from common people on this craft production, because it happens everywhere. They know exactly how labor intensive and painstaking this work can be, but they still choose to turn a blind eye, or they choose to ignore the true value of this craft, or pay for what it's worth. And accordingly, it causes the decreasing interest of the later generations, the younger generations in this culture. Traditional weaving is a heritage passed down from generation to generation within family. But at present times, young generations take less and less interest in taking over this culture, but instead they tend to venture into other job opportunities or moving to cities or other industries. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've heard about the challenges that artisans face that specialize in weaving, but it would be really interesting to then hear about what are the greatest opportunities.
So there are huge opportunities for Myanmar textiles, especially in the international market for higher end artisanal textiles. You have a country that was effectively shut up from the international market and the rest of the world for over half a century. So all these unique traditions in weaving, all these unique design motifs, they're still here. And the international market is willing to pay premium for those types of textiles. Then we estimate that there are over 1 million weavers in Myanmar, and they are for the most part incredibly skilled weavers. So you've got these amazing traditions, you've got a large and highly skilled labor force, and it's just about making that connection to the international market where there is demand for high-end textiles, and we've seen that demand actually be surprisingly resilient even throughout the whole COVID pandemic. And so it's just about making that link and making sure that buyers find it easy to source fabrics from Myanmar, as easy as they would find it from countries like India or China or wherever it is that they're sourcing from.
Thank you, Nathalie. So that leads on to our final question before we open up the conversation to the audience. So if people want to start putting questions into the chat box now, I'll be answering those shortly. But our final question is, why are these traditions so important to protect, and how can they be supported to thrive?
I'll start off answering that question, but I very much welcome May and Heyman's inputs, as they are the true specialists. But I think, as has become clear throughout this talk, these traditions are the cultural expression of people. And Myanmar knows so many different groups of people. It has over 135 different ethnic groups who call the country home, each with their own traditions, with their own language, with their own part of the country that they call home. And these textiles are very much a cultural expression of their group identity, of their place in the world, and of their relationship to their ancestors. Myanmar being such a diverse country, this is truly something that should be celebrated, and it is something that we try to celebrate in the work that we do and the products that we bring to market, showing the diversity of Myanmar textile traditions, the people behind those traditions, and fostering a sense of social cohesion and pride among the many different groups in Myanmar through these textiles.
I couldn't agree more, Nathalie. Thanks for your valuable insights. And of course, this has been a long-built cultural identity that can hardly be replaced with anything fast or anything modern. And that is exactly why here in our work, we try to strictly follow the heritage and cultural aspect and value of each product. And I think to promote this effectively is to meet strong commercial, international needs and standards, with particular emphasis on design and quality, as well as the environmental, ethical, and responsible aspects in clothing and textile trade. Yeah.
Yes, I think I would just add a few points to it, because so we talk with commercialization and like modernization, like it's for me, I think it's almost unavoidable that some of the these traditions will be lost. So in order to protect them, I think we can do in two ways. First is to help document these traditions and the motives, meaning like some of the motives, meaning there is no proper records or documents currently, maintaining all these, what these motives mean and like how these techniques are woven. So there's no proper records right now. So I think one way to preserve these traditions is to record them and document them as there are still some traditions going around. And the second way is to preserve them in live form. And as May also mentioned in her previous question, answer that the younger generations have eventually lost interest in keeping these traditions alive. So I think second way is to keep educating them, and then trying to make sure that these traditions are passed on to next generations.
Can I just add one more thing to that? Because I think all of that is encapsulated quite well in our collaboration with ISHKAR. And in many ways, you are a dream client when it comes to our mission to preserving these traditions, because you were very insistent on working with heritage patterns, and not just seeing Myanmar as a country where textiles are woven and where you've got a large labor force, but really working specifically with the traditions that are common in Khine. And ultimately that is the way, as Khine and May also said, to make sure that the craft is passed on to the generation. It's by making sure that they can make an income out of this craft and find meaningful work in the craft. And so responsible buyers are absolutely key to that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nathalie, Khine and May, for all of your amazing answers to our questions. I will be sharing the links to the collection that we designed with Turquoise Mountain in Myanmar as well at the end if anyone wants to have a look at the collection. But for now, we will open up to some questions from the audience. And so the first one is, it would be interesting to document the different meanings of the woven symbols and their sacred content. Will this be part of your project? Is this something that you're working on at the moment or that will be available?
Certainly. We've already done a few documentation projects in the regions in which we currently work, which is Khine in the west, Khine in the northwest, and then Khine in the north of the country. The latest collection of backstrap fabrics that you saw on the last slide, the gold, the turquoise, the blue, all of those have a symbolic meaning, and that symbolic meaning is part of the way in which we catalog them and part of the way in which we promote them to buyers. As we're moving into new regions of Myanmar, Shan State being one, the first step is always to document the traditions that exist there, and part of that is of course their symbolic meaning and the symbols that are found in the textiles that the artisans weave.
So we have another question here. Can you sort of talk about how long it would take to weave a wedding blanket? So just to sort of get an idea about this one particular item and how long that would take to produce traditionally.
Yes, I can answer that. So it depends on how complicated the motifs or the patterns are on the blanket. And as I mentioned before, so the wedding blanket is made by stitching two backstrap pieces together. And so for one piece, it could take up to like 14 to 21 days just to weave one piece. One another point is that these weavers are not full-time weaving, like so they do it as their side job. Because most of them are like primarily farmers, so during harvesting time, or like for women, they also have to take care of the children and house chores. So they are not sitting 8 hours a day. So they are weaving at whenever they can, to keep these traditions going, and also as a side income. So yeah, so one piece of backstrap, like half of the blanket, could take up to 14 to 21 days, depending on how complicated the design is.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So another question here from the audience, and one that Nathalie did touch on previously, which is asking how Turquoise Mountain collaborates with international brands, and how does the design or product development process work?
May, would you like to take that one, or do you want me to have a go?
I want you to have a go first and see if I should jump in.
Yeah. Well, Myanmar textiles are new to most buyers. Most textile buyers have sourcing relationship with countries like India or China. So when they come to Myanmar, it's first about educating buyers what Myanmar textiles are, what types of fabric we can, or the supported weavers can produce, and what's not quite possible. So there's a strong element of education. And then we have what we call contact sheets, which basically document the various types of motifs and fabrics that can be found in Myanmar. So we would send those to a client, and they might say, oh, we like this one, or we like that one. And then, of course, the product is key. What would you like to make? Because not all types of fabric are suitable for all purposes. The fabrics woven in Khine on the backstrap loom tend to be quite thick, and so they're actually perfect for upholstery, but maybe not so comfortable for a jacket. On the other hand, the thin cotton frame loom fabrics that are woven in Khine are perfect for fashion wear, but if you would upholster your sofa in them, it might not work out so well. So it's about matching the product requirements of the client with the different weaving techniques and styles that are found in Myanmar. And then also, and then selecting the design motifs that the client would like to work with, which again, narrow the focus further down on a particular region or a particular group of people. We are able to match most colors. So we have our own curated heritage palette, but if a client would like to work in a different color, that can certainly be done. And then we start the process of weaving. We brief the weavers. We monitor production, we send pictures to the clients, and as May and Heyman said, it's a very lengthy process, so the client does need to be patient, but then you have a wonderful product at the end of it. But it's very much, we try and co-create pieces, really, bringing in international clients, but really working with the design traditions that exist here and with local designers and illustrators as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So we have another question here. How do you select which weavers you support? Do they work individually or in cooperatives? And how does it work? Are they paid per piece or sort of for hours worked?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question, and it's a really good question. We work with two types of weavers, the frame loom weavers, who are mostly working in existing workshops where they are employed by the workshop owner. So that means they are full-time employed and they get a monthly salary, and they go to work and come back from work in the evenings. And then we work with home-based weavers, and most of them use backstrap looms. So you can find the occasional frame loom in someone's home as well. And the home-based weavers are all, in a way, informal entrepreneurs. They're not employed by anyone, and indeed they are paid by the piece. So they tend to work individually, although you'll find that a lot of home-based weavers in one community sometimes join together, or they'll work on a project together. So if we have an order for 10 or 20 or 30 of the same backstrap woven fabrics, they tend to be woven by a group of individual weavers within one community. And as I mentioned, they are paid by the piece, and then how much that is, of course, also partially determined by the time they spend on weaving a single piece.
Thank you, Nathalie. We have another question here, and I apologize if I'm not quite following it entirely, but it's lotus silk is produced nowadays also for the common market outside the religious scene. I'm not sure if that's a traditional use for lotus silk, or if anyone can answer that one.
Yes, lotus woven products are now being commercialized, and other than for the religious purpose, they are made into common use products like shawls, and also because lotus fiber is just so valuable, they only maybe 1 or 2 threads are woven into clothing as well, and sometimes they are woven in combination with silk. So there are lots of lotus, pure lotus shawl, or silk and lotus combined products as well nowadays. Yeah, you can see those a lot when you go to inlay.
Yeah. To add a little bit, the lotus, it can still be found in the common market, yes, but it can be comparatively more expensive, much more expensive. And in this context, like in the pandemic, like you can also see the people getting creative and using the lotus yarn, because people come to make mask, cotton face mask. So some of them, they use the lotus yarn also, like we can see nowadays.
Brilliant. I think that is our last question from the audience, unless anyone has a last minute question they want to put in the chat box now. But if not, I'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much to Nathalie, May and Mahn for joining us and for telling us about this incredible weaving technique and the traditions of Myanmar's textiles. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you and to work with you on the new collection that we've been developing. I will put those links if anyone is interested in the chat box so you can have a look. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to speaking again soon and developing new products in the future.
Thank you so much. Really, it was a great opportunity to share a bit on the history and the different techniques of Myanmar weaving. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to get back.
Mm-hmm. We did have one question asking to be put in contact with you, Nathalie, so I can put you in touch a little bit after the conversation as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody, and for joining everybody in the audience.